Hello. So, if you are someone who has a problem with vintage stuff being destroyed, I'm so sorry, but this video isn't for you. Because she will be destroyed. She already is quite damaged. I will show you some of the damaged pieces right now, I hope. And that is why I decided to use her. If you still have a problem with it, we will see it in another video if you like. But this one isn't yours. Now on to why she will be destroyed. I watched the first episode of Squid Game today, and interesting, strange, but the main thing was I was very, very intrigued by the doll in the first episode. Because I don't really like or don't really feel the Halloween doll I originally planned, I thought she could be quite a great option. But I think it's quite boring to only sculpt over her and have her look like this doll, so I thought let's build the whole scene. That is what I planned for today. So let's start. Let me walk you through all the steps. I started with the background by using 2 sheets of foam core board. The first one I painted entirely in, a beige color that resembles a little bit of sand, or that is similar to sand, because later this will be covered with sand, and in case there is something showing through, that we don't have a white spot. I took a free-to-use picture of a wheat field, removed some of the trees in the background with fire alpaca, and then printed it out, cut it to size, and glued it onto the second foam core board. Then I put a layer of varnish over it, which damaged it slightly, so now it has a painterly effect, which is fine with me. With some strips I made the back a little bit more durable, more sturdy, and glued everything together. And then it was time for some mixy. It was just some sand and some white crafting glue, and then after this was mixed quite well, I spread it out onto the surface. After this was dry, I had to press it down with some heavy books, and I could go on to make the tree. For the tree, I just used aluminium foil, twisted it up so that I had some branches and twigs, and covered all of that with polymer clay, baked it, colored it. I don't show you all the process because you will see a lot of sculpting and a lot of coloring later, so I thought this first one I spare you, because there will be a lot. After that was done, I glued it onto the background, first with some hot glue and then with the sand glue mixture, and was able to go to our little victims. For all the figurines, which are 6 in the end, I used a skeleton out of wire that I bulked up with some aluminium foil, and I already knew that it would be quite difficult for me to sculpt something detailed, because sculpting in such a small scale isn't my thing. I'm halfway decent when it is big, but when it is small, no, just no. So I went on with not caring for too much details. And the first attempt failed. Surprise, surprise, I am definitely not Ace of Clay. So I removed it again and then started all over by just putting on one layer that was as smooth as I could get it, or as I was willing to get it. Let's say it this way. Because I'm quite sure I could have got it smoother, and yes, I think I would have been able to give everything more detail, but I wasn't willing to attempt or to work too long on this, because I sometimes lose interest in stuff. There is a possibility that I have ADHD. No one wants to confirm it. They always tell me, possible, but not enough to clearly say it. What is okay? I don't really need something more. But I have a tendency that quite fast things get boring for me if I have to do them again and again. And with these little figurines, I was bored after I did the first one. So basically I covered everything with clay. For the contestants, I sculpted teeny tiny hands as nice as I was able to, or as I was willing to. Some not very detailed faces, and for the soldiers I just went with some very rough shapes. And then it was time for the first baking. For the clothing, I used thin sheets of polymer clay. I rolled them out on the thinnest setting possible on my pasta machine, and then just draped the clothing on top. With this you get quite nice folds by accident. They just happen. And I decided to just go with them because I wasn't willing to sculpt too details. As I mentioned, 6 of them. And I was already annoyed by them. So, this is a quite easy method, but it is quite fragile. I tried to solidify the polymer clay a little bit with a heat gun between steps. Then I baked everything. They tend to break. You shouldn't handle them too heavy-handed. I had the problem that the tray I had laying them on while I was painting them fall over and everything broke into pieces. I wasn't able to sculpt them again, or I wasn't willing to, and just glued them back together, and it was fine. But just keep in mind, if you want to have something that is more sturdy, not this way. You could obviously use some more bulk under it and have this as the top layer and press it a little bit more down. But though I wanted to have the folds visible, I went with this way. And I'm quite happy with it in the end. The coloring process, I made off camera because seeing me paint things again and again is not as interesting. But the thing I wanted to show was that I took a wash, which is dish soap, water and a little bit of color, just sprayed it over it and let it dry. And yes, I used the heat gun again to see the effect right away. Normally I would tend more to air dry it. Now it is time to torture our little dolly. First thing is removing everything that was in the way, mainly parts of her hair. And I sanded down some of the areas already and noticed first it is quite stiff, so cutting through it is not that easy, and second, it's able to be sanded very easy, so that was something good. And yeah, while I was on it, I thought about inserted eyes and was like, yes, great idea. And cut holes into her face, or first sketched out the eyes, then cut holes into her face. With an X-Acto knife that I heated up between steps because of the stiffness of the material, but with the heated up method it went quite well, I have to say. And after that was done, I noticed something, and that is, if I want to insert some eyes, there has to be the option or the possibility to reach the eye section inside her head, and the holes weren't big enough for this. So I cut her whole head into pieces. Or basically I just removed the top of her head, the crown, so that I can reach the inside with the eyes I made. The seam is still visible in the end, which is a bummer, but let's go with it. Out of polymer clay I made the eyes because I already wanted to make the whole sculpting part on the doll with epoxy clay, and for this the eyes had to be inside her head already. And then it was time to mix quite a lot of epoxy clay. I had to mix or use nearly all of the stuff I had left, so yeah. With some aluminium foil I bulked up the part where her skirt is and tried to get her legs in place, and then I covered all of this with the epoxy clay just to give it a first rough shape. I tried to sculpt on the nearly dried clay and it was a disaster, so I flattened that out again and let it dry completely before going on with it. While I was on this first go, I decided to bulk up her cheeks a little, and in the end I think I didn't bulk them out enough. Which was quite surprising for me. Because I already thought these are quite some chubby cheeks that I made. Turns out, not enough. Not chubby enough. After this first layer was dry, I mixed another batch and made little snakes that I placed onto the skirt and then tried to work in as smoothly as I could. And you will notice that they are not as smooth as they could have been, and maybe I could have sanded them later. But I was too lazy for this. Lazy crafter strikes again. So I left them as they were. Guess this scenery is just nice from a distance. After I decided removing her head would make it a lot easier, I went on to the stockings and the shoes, and then to her fake joints. The original doll has joints. I could have sculpted all of them, but I decided to just make fake ones by putting on a strip of epoxy clay and just flattening out one side of it to give it the look of joints. Same with her sleeves and with her neckline as well. I decided to just put on the details that needed to be done and try to smooth them out as much as possible to not add too much of bulk and stuff to the whole doll. I wanted her to be as close or as I don't want it to add any bulk to her. So I think that is what I tried to say. Then, with some last stuff, I sculpted the rest of the face that I wasn't that happy with, and closed all the holes and the gaps that I made by cutting away stuff. And then it was time to finally put in the eyes and try to get the head close again. My initial thought was, oh well, you can just use hot glue and then sculpt over it. That didn't work because while I was sculpting, the hot glue came loose and it destroyed the whole fringe I made. So, I had to sculpt that again. And at that moment I was like, just be careful. Don't try to glue the head together first. Just try to be careful. Though I'm the most careful person that ever existed, this went as well as you might imagine. So I worked most of the time while trying to make her fringe happen on smoothing out the crack that was reappearing and reappearing. So in the end I just put on some epoxy clay and left it to dry. It was halfway decent, and then I just decided let it dry and work on it as soon as this is able to hold itself again. And though I'm not as good on the theme of waiting for stuff to dry, of course I tried it again, while it wasn't completely dry, and failed again. And then I decided to stop it and just leave it as it was and make the rest of it the next day. Which was basically just her little ponytails by slapping on some beads of epoxy clay and then just something that was rounded, and a snake that was rounded to look like a ponytail. And with that, she could dry as well. Then it was time for the coloring process, and I started with her hair, which is black, which went completely great. It was so easy. What kind of surprise. It was just black. Black, most of the time, is quite easy. For the rest of the painting, especially the yellow, I had to do 6 or 7 layers, I think, to get it slightly opaque. And for the orange, I think it was 5 layers or something like that. Quite a lot of layers, but worth it in the end. And again, I used the heat gun quite a lot because I wanted to speed up the process to get her done. I really wanted to post her this Friday, so from my point of view tomorrow. And yeah, this painting process was yesterday. So on Wednesday. And I thought, that couldn't go. That will not work out. So I had to speed up everything a little bit. And it worked in the end. Looking back at it, I think I should have took the time to work on the folds a little bit more. But you can only do so much afterwards, so I'm okay with it. While mixing the face paint, I tried something, and that was using gesso as a base, which went quite well. It gave me a more rough texture, a little bit more matte than the rest of the acrylic part, and gave me the opportunity to use some chalk pastels and some watercolor pencils without using MSC first. So I put on her lip color and all the rest of the details, like her little bit of blush and stuff, with some with chalk pastels and watercolor pencils. And then I put a teeny tiny layer of varnish over it. And yeah, first I thought I should use MSC, and I really should have used it, because the liquid varnish removed some of the details in the end, so I had to reapply them after it was dried. But it was okay anyway. And then it was time to varnish everything, varnish the hell out of it, and I was done. And I couldn't believe that I was done. But I was able to finally put everything together. So the tree was followed by the doll, and then by all the little ones. And originally I made 7 little figurines, and yeah, one was a little bit too big, so I decided to remove it, and it would have been a little bit crowded in the end anyway, so skip it. I painted on the finish line and then glued the last of the figurines on with some hot glue. I had to re-glue the doll later because the hot glue wasn't able to support her enough. But after this was repaired, I finally was done with her. And I think it looks okay. It could be improved, but it's nice. And with that, she is done. Or not only she, but the whole thing. Yay! The next Halloween doll finished. To tell you how bad I am at following trends, just a quick story at the end. My plan was, when I made the Chucky doll, to make a Tiffany doll 1 year later. That was replaced by Annabelle. And then I was thinking, okay, Chucky was for my closest friend, Annabelle was for me, and my ex-boyfriend, who I'm still friends with, we separated years ago and I still refer to him as my ex-boyfriend, is completely into Saw, so I thought, okay, the next one is Jigsaw and then maybe Tiffany. Yeah, now Jigsaw was replaced by this one. I'm so sorry, Mario. Tiffany Jigsaw doll. Maybe they will happen one day. I don't know. I was like, do I want to make Jigsaw and maybe get some more followers? Or do I want to make this and, yeah, just have fun with it? In the end I decided to just have fun. And while I was working on her, my brother came in, looked at her, noticed right away what I was doing and told me, "Oh, that is a great idea. Squid Game is taking the internet by storm." Oh. I haven't even noticed that. I saw some videos from, for example, from Lavender Town. I saw a drawing video, but I didn't notice that the things she drew were these little guys. So this happened by accident, that I followed a trend. Yay! You will see some more shots of her in the end now, and I hope you will have a great rest of the spooky season. For me, I'm mainly done with the projects I had in mind, so for October this will be the last video. We will see us again in November. I hope you have a great time, and until then, bye.